I'd like to talk about the story Neighbours, written by Winton in 1996. First off, I will start with a short summary, and then a short section about the composition of the story. Then I will do a characterization of the young couple and the antagonists of the story. Then I will talk about the symbolism in the story, then the themes and the moral of the story, and lastly I will put it into perspective. The short story Neighbours, which is written by Winton, was written in 1996. It deals with a young couple who just moved into an Australian neighborhood where a lot of European immigrants live. And at first they are not very welcoming of them and they feel uncomfortable. But as the story progresses, their views on their new neighbors changes. And the composition, the story is told in a third-person omniscient point of view, and in the story the author he doesn't use names for the characters which he describes. He just uses like the young couple and the Polish widower, and by doing that the characters, they're not clearly defined, and the result of that is that these characters, they can be like universally relatable for the reader, for any reader. And for the characterization, the young couple is the protagonist of the story, while the Macedonian family and the Polish widower are the antagonists. And before they moved to this neighborhood, the young couple lived in what they call expansive outer suburbs. And at first it felt like sojourners, and they don't talk to anyone. And the so-called young man, he stays at home and writes his thesis, while the young woman goes to the hospital to work. And in the start of the story, they're quite shocked by the behavior of the new neighbors, which can be seen on page 1, line 12 to 16. The young man and woman had lived all their lives in expansive suburbs, where good neighbors were seldom seen and never heard. The sound of spitting and washing and daybreak watering came as a shock. The Macedonian family shouted, ranted, and screamed. In this quote, the Macedonian family is actually portrayed quite negatively. And there is a triad in this quote with 3 negatively loaded words, which are shouted, ranted, and screamed. And it further supports that at first the young couple has quite a sinister view of these new neighbors. Furthermore, these new neighbors also seem pretty wary and distrustful towards the young couple, which can be seen on page 1, line 21, where it says, "The Macedonians raised eyebrows at the late hour at which the newcomers rose in the morning." And both of these quotes exemplify the cultural differences between the newcomers, the young couple, and the neighbors, the Macedonians and the Polish widower. But nevertheless, the story shifts, and when the neighbors offer, when the neighbors offer the young couple help with the garden, on page 1, line 33 to 35, and the Polish widower rebuild the young man's attempt at building a hen house. So the young couple's feelings towards the neighbors change throughout the story. This change from being a cynic and sinister towards being that they actually like them. And symbolism of the story, and the shift in the story and the mindset of the young couple regarding their prejudice towards the neighbors is symbolized by a change of seasons on page 2, line 42 to 46, where it says, "As autumn merged into winter and the vermilion sunsets were followed by sudden dark dusk touch with the smell of wood smoke and the sound of roosters crowing day's end, the young couple found themselves smiling back at the neighbors." So here you can clearly see that a change has happened. Because the young couple, they find themselves enjoying what they had earlier annoyed them, and they even smile at the neighbors. And this change of season symbolizes a transition for the newcomers to feel like comfortable and at home. Further evidence of the shift in the story can be seen on page 2, line 50 to 52. In the street they no longer walked with their eyes lowered. They felt superior and proud when their parents came to visit and to cast shocked glances across the fence. And this just proves that the young couple feels like they belong in this neighborhood now, which contrasts the feelings that they had at the start of the story. And moreover, another symbol in the story is the fact that the protagonists, the young couple, are never defined beyond being a young couple. And this can be seen as a symbol of their naivety, them being naive, and their lack of experience. The themes and the morals of the story. First off, the story is it explores overcoming cultural differences and uniting human beings. And it shows that immigrants can be seen as a social enrichment to the Australian society. Because different from the young couple, these European immigrants seems to have a sense of community, which helps the young couple to understand that prejudice and discrimination that they had towards these European immigrants were just based on their own ignorance. And you can say that a theme of the story is a bond of community or belonging to a certain group or place, which the young couple feels at the end of the story. And also the theme of the story can be to overcome prejudice due to cultural differences. And the moral of the story is that you can say at the start the young couple is shocked by the cultural differences, and as the plot progresses, a sense of mutual respect between the young couple and the neighbors appear, and now the reader feels as if they themselves are a part of the community in the story. And the moral of the story is to make the reader feel content towards having a multicultural community, which is what they have in Australia. And I think that is why Tim Winton wrote the story, to make the reader feel as if a multicultural community is a good thing. And to put it into perspective, I would like to put this story into perspective to Fireweed, where there is this man Baluta who comes from Africa and moved to the USA after his village was destroyed by militants. And then there's Tiffany, a rich, spoiled housewife. And this story presents some pretty obvious differences between different parts of the world and these people from these different places. And you can say that Tiffany comes off as ignorant for the reader, because she comes off ignorant because of the experiences that the reader knows Baluta has. And this is the same way that the couple seems ignorant at first, because they don't know the neighbors yet. They just don't like them because they are loud. But they sooner find out that they are actually good people. So in that way, you can say that ignorance and cultural differences are the similarities of the story. But in the Neighbours, these cultural differences are overcome by the young couple. So that was all I had. Thank you.